The next night, the envelope sat on the nightstand again, almost daring me to confront it fully. Liam had gone to bed early, leaving me alone with the fragile stack of letters and photographs, the dim lamplight casting long shadows across the room. I ran my fingers over the papers, each one a relic of a past I had meticulously tucked away. The weight of it pressed on me, and I realized I could no longer skirt around the truth. I began reading aloud, letting the words fill the quiet room, piecing together the life my husband had led before and alongside the one we had known. He had loved in ways I didn't understand, made choices that were selfish, yet somehow still carried a tenderness I hadn't anticipated. With every letter, I felt the delicate threads of my memory unravel, weaving instead a more complicated tapestry. A man both flawed and human, whose absence had left gaps we were only now beginning to comprehend. Just then, Liam appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by the faint hallway light. "Mom, I couldn't sleep," he said softly, stepping closer. "I need to know everything, nothing held back." I took a deep breath, feeling the magnitude of the moment. "Liam, your father wasn't perfect. He kept secrets, made mistakes, but he also loved us in his way, and I made my own choices, some out of fear, some to protect you. It wasn't always easy to separate love from error, or intention from consequence." He sat beside me on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on mine, absorbing every word. "So, you're saying the man I thought I knew wasn't the whole story?" "No," I said, voice trembling slightly. "He was part of our story, but not the only part. And what I need you to understand is this. Even when people fail us, even when they disappoint, we can choose what lessons we carry forward. We can choose how we respond, how we grow, and how we forgive. Not for them, but for ourselves." Liam reached out, placing his hand over mine, a silent affirmation of understanding. "I think I'm starting to see it," he said. "It's not about hating him. It's about understanding him and understanding us." The envelope lay between us, a symbol of revelation and closure. We had faced the shadows together, dissected the past, and unearthed truths that had threatened to define our grief and anger. Yet in doing so, we had discovered a resilience neither of us had anticipated. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of fragile peace. The past had been illuminated, not erased, not diminished, but finally understood. I realized that love and loss, secrecy and honesty, are not opposites, but intertwined forces shaping the contours of our lives. And in sharing this night, this confrontation with Liam, I had not only honored the truth of his father's life, but also the integrity of our own bond. As the first light of dawn seeped into the room, I felt it settle over us like a promise, that while the past cannot be changed, understanding it together could allow us to move forward with clarity, compassion, and hope. Morning light filtered softly through the curtains, painting the room in pale gold. The envelope, now carefully tucked back into its box, rested on the nightstand, a silent witness to the truths we had uncovered. Liam moved quietly around the room, making his breakfast with the ease of someone who had faced something difficult and emerged steadier for it. I watched him, marveling at the way he carried both the weight of revelation and the grace of understanding. The night's events had altered the rhythm of our home. The shadows of secrecy had been exposed, yet instead of leaving us fractured, they had drawn us closer. There was a clarity now, a shared comprehension that had been impossible before. Liam's questions, his curiosity, and his willingness to confront the truth had forced me to confront my own assumptions, my own fears, and the ways I had tried to shield both of us from life's harsher realities. I poured myself a cup of coffee and settled in the living room, the familiar scent of brewing beans mingling with the faint aroma of vanilla from the candle I had left burning. I reflected on how carefully we build our worlds, brick by brick, often believing that stability is enough to protect the hearts we cherish. Yet life has a way of cracking even the strongest walls, revealing what lies beneath. And sometimes those revelations are not destructive. They are transformative. Liam joined me, sliding into the chair across from mine. He was quieter than usual, thoughtful, his eyes carrying a mix of contemplation and newfound empathy. "Mom," he said softly, "I think I understand now. About Dad, about you, about us." I nodded, feeling a swell of emotion that I could neither name nor contain. Understanding doesn't mean forgetting, Liam. It doesn't erase the hurt or the mistakes. But it allows us to see clearly, to choose how we move forward without being trapped by the past. We sipped our coffee in companionable silence, the house around us filled with the gentle hum of a world that had resumed its usual pace, yet subtly altered. The experience of facing the envelope, of navigating the layers of secrecy and disappointment, had given both of us a sense of resilience. I realized that our bond, tested, challenged, and refined, was stronger for the trials it had endured. Looking out the window, I felt a quiet hope settle over me. Life is unpredictable, shaped by choices made by ourselves and by others. Yet even in the face of imperfect love and incomplete truths, there is a path forward. Liam and I had walked part of that path together, and in doing so, discovered that the ties between parent and child are not just defined by protection, but by honesty, empathy, and trust. As he finished his breakfast and moved toward the door, I called out, "Thank you, Liam, for trusting me, for listening, for sharing this with me." He smiled softly, a small, knowing gesture before leaving the kitchen, and in that moment, I understood that while the past cannot be changed, the future is shaped by what we choose to carry from it, and that the bonds we nurture with honesty and courage can withstand even the heaviest truths. The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and makes every creak in the house sound louder than it is. I had just settled under the soft weight of my quilt when a knock at my bedroom door pulled me from a half-sleep haze. At first I thought it was Liam, my 17-year-old son, waking from a bad dream. But when I opened the door, I found him standing there, not clutching a pillow or muttering about nightmares, but with an intensity in his gaze that made my heart skip a beat. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked softly. There was hesitation in his voice, an edge of urgency I hadn't heard before. His eyes, usually filled with playful mischief or teenage exhaustion, were now wide and searching. I nodded wordlessly, stepping aside to let him in, the quiet tension between us already thickening the air. I have always prided myself on being a careful, attentive mother. Since Liam's father passed away when he was 3, our lives had settled into a rhythm that was both comforting and predictable. School, homework, dinners, and quiet evenings where the world felt manageable. My house, modest but warm, was filled with reminders of our life together. Photographs of his childhood adventures, birthday celebrations with balloons and cake, and tiny keepsakes tucked in drawers. Each one a testament to the years we had navigated together. Yet beneath the surface, I had learned that even the most stable lives can harbor secrets. The quiet corners of our home held memories I rarely revisited. Letters hidden away, conversations half remembered, and moments of vulnerability I had carefully tucked behind a facade of composure. I had always thought that my duty was to shield Liam from disappointment, to maintain a safe and predictable world for him. But sometimes, life has a way of forcing truths into the light when we least expect them. That night, as Liam perched on the edge of my bed, I sensed that something had shifted. The familiar contours of his face were illuminated by the soft glow of the bedside lamp, and yet he seemed older, burdened with knowledge or feelings he wasn't ready to articulate. I could see the lines of anxiety along his forehead, the subtle trembling of his hands. For a brief, unnerving moment, he was no longer just my child. He was a person confronting a truth that would ripple through both our lives. "I found something," he whispered, finally breaking the silence. The words hung in the room, weighty and unsettling. I swallowed hard, bracing myself. Even before I knew the details, I understood that whatever he held in his hands had the power to change the way we saw each other, and the life we had built together. And in that fragile, uncertain moment, I realized that nothing would ever feel the same again. Liam's hand trembled slightly as he reached into his backpack and pulled out a worn envelope. The edges were frayed, the paper soft from handling, but what it contained made my chest tighten before I even opened it. He placed it gently on the bed between us, eyes flicking nervously toward mine. I didn't know what to do," he admitted, voice low. "I thought, maybe you should see this first." I swallowed hard and nodded, though my stomach knotted with unease. For a moment, I hesitated, afraid that opening the envelope would pull us both into a place neither of us could easily leave, but curiosity and a strange sense of inevitability pushed me forward. Carefully, I unfolded the papers inside. There were letters, photographs, and notes, pieces of a past I had thought resolved. My husband, the man I had loved and mourned, appeared in these images with people I barely recognized. Smiles, gatherings, candid moments captured in time, yet they radiated a life I hadn't known existed. My pulse quickened as I sifted through the collection. The boy who had once relied on me for every scraped knee and sleepless night now watched in silence, absorbing my reactions with a seriousness that left me unmoored. "Mom, what does this mean?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. His question was simple, but the weight behind it was immense. I took a deep breath, realizing that the truth I had avoided for years could no longer remain hidden. "It means life isn't always what it seems," I said slowly. "Your father, he had parts of himself that I never fully understood. Choices, relationships, moments he kept to himself, and I made decisions to protect us, to keep our family intact." The silence that followed was heavy, yet it was not oppressive. It was a bridge, fragile but real, connecting us across the unspoken chasm of grief, disappointment, and curiosity. Liam's eyes searched mine, seeking reassurance, seeking context. I wanted to shield him, yet I knew that honesty was the only path forward. "I just don't understand why he kept it from us," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes people hide things to protect the people they love," I explained. "Sometimes, even parents make mistakes they hope will never come to light. It doesn't excuse what happened, but it explains it." I saw the conflict in his expression, the mixture of anger, confusion, and budding empathy. He was trying to reconcile the father he remembered with the man revealed in these letters. And I, too, was confronting the delicate balance of grief and understanding, of loyalty and revelation. As the night wore on, our conversation unfolded like a map of buried emotions. We discussed, argued gently, and paused often, letting silence punctuate our understanding. I could feel the weight of our shared discovery settling over us, pressing against our chests, but also binding us in a quiet solidarity. By the time the first faint glow of dawn seeped through the curtains, the envelope lay unopened in parts, yet its presence had changed everything. That night, what began as a simple disturbance, a knock on my bedroom door, had evolved into a confrontation with the past, and the tension it carried would shape our lives in ways neither of us could yet comprehend. And even as I guided Liam back to his room, I knew the hardest truths were still ahead, waiting for both of us to face them fully. The following evening, the envelope reappeared on my nightstand, as if it had a life of its own. Liam had left it there deliberately, a silent invitation for me to confront the truths it contained once and for all. I stared at it for a long moment, my fingers hovering over the fragile paper, knowing that opening it meant venturing into a labyrinth of memory, regret, and unspoken sorrow. When Liam entered my room, his steps were hesitant, yet there was a determination in his posture I hadn't noticed before. "Mom, can we go through it together?" he asked. His voice was steady, but the tension in his jaw betrayed the storm beneath. I nodded, taking a deep breath as I lifted the letters and photographs. With each piece we examined, fragments of the past unfolded. Moments of joy intertwined with hints of secrecy, snapshots of interactions that challenged everything I had assumed about his father. I could feel Liam's eyes on me, scanning my reactions, reading my unspoken emotions with the precision only a child raised in close intimacy can manage. "Why didn't you ever tell me about any of this?" he asked quietly, almost accusatory, yet tinged with confusion. "I didn't want to burden you," I admitted. "You were too young, and I thought, if I protected you, it would protect us. But I see now that hiding it only delayed the inevitable." He looked down at the letters, tracing the edges with his fingers, as though attempting to reconcile the words on paper with the father he had known. "It's like, there's a man I never met," he whispered, "and yet he's still Dad." I reached out and touched his hand, a gesture of reassurance. "Yes, and even if we can't fully understand him, we can choose what his memory means to us. what we carry forward, and what we let go. For hours, we navigated that delicate terrain together. The room was filled with quiet murmurs, occasional sighs, and the soft shuffle of papers. I watched Liam grapple with conflicting emotions: admiration, anger, sadness, and a dawning comprehension of the complexity of human behavior. And in that moment, I realized that the true challenge wasn't merely understanding his father, it was understanding ourselves. At one point, Liam paused and looked at me directly, eyes glistening with the weight of emotion. "Mom, do you think he ever loved us enough to be honest?" I hesitated, choosing my words with care. Love is complicated, Liam. Sometimes people love deeply, yet fail to act in ways that show it. That doesn't make their feelings insignificant, but it does mean their choices can hurt those they care about. His gaze softened, and he nodded slowly. I think I'm beginning to understand. The night grew darker outside, but a sense of fragile clarity settled between us. The envelope remained on the bed, a testament to the past and a catalyst for the present. By facing the truth together, we had not erased the pain, but we had created space for understanding, and that, I realized, was the first step toward healing. And as Liam finally rose to leave, I knew that while the shadows of our past would linger, the bond between us had strengthened in ways neither of us could yet fully articulate.